One day when I was a kid, my brother and I were out in the backyard playing in the dirt, and our mother called us and said, "Come in for dinner and go wash your hands first." So we ran to the bathroom and we sort of splashed some water over our hands and dried them on our pants and came to the table. And my mother said, "Let me look at your hands. You didn't wash your hands. Now go back to the bathroom and wash them with soap and water." So we went back, washed our hands, dried them on the towel, and came back to the table. And she said, "And don't you ever lie to me again. Never tell a lie." Well, we didn't get a chance to tell her. It was really only a half lie because we half washed our hands. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. God tells them, "You may eat of any tree in the garden except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat of that tree, you will die." So Adam and Eve live happily in the Garden of Eden. They have everything they need, food, it's warm, there's nothing to harm them. There's no death in the Garden of Eden. It's paradise. And then comes the serpent, the slithery, scaly serpent. And he says, "Did God say to you that you can't eat of any tree in the garden?" And they said, "Well, we can eat of any tree in the garden, but except for one, and that's the tree right in the middle of the garden, the tree of the knowledge of the good and evil. If we eat of that tree, we will die." And the serpent says, "Oh, you won't die. If you eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll become like God, and you'll become wise, and you will know good and evil." So, when they saw that the tree was good for food and was a delight to the eyes and was desired for becoming wise, they took of the fruit and they ate it. And then their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked and they were ashamed. Then God cast them out of the garden and said, "You came from the dust, now you will return to the dust." So through their disobedience, is the way the story goes, death came into the world. That's sometimes called the story of the fall of humankind, because it's an explanation of how death came into the world. It's one way to explain that. But there's a lie in this story. The serpent told a lie to Adam and Eve. When Eve said, "If we eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we will die," the serpent says, "Oh no, you won't die." And that was a lie. Now, the serpent knew that they wouldn't die right away, but he knew that God would cast them out of the Garden of Eden, and eventually they would die, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So the story is it's about the consequences of lying. Telling the truth is the only way that people can trust each other. And society is built on the trust that we earn by telling the truth. That's why one of the 10 Commandments is, "Thou shalt not bear false witness." And we have a whole system of justice that's based on discovering the truth. A witness stands in the courtroom and the judge asks, "Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" And the court system cannot work unless it's based on the truth. And still people find ways to wiggle out of telling the truth. It's become a fine art of not telling the truth. Some people are very good at it. If you don't want to tell the truth, the first thing you do is you avoid answering direct questions. You never say yes or no. Instead, you use the 3 Ds: deny, deflect, and demonize. First, deny everything. I wasn't there. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't see anything. And if you say a lie enough times, then people begin to believe it. And then deflect. Bring up all kinds of unrelated information, confuse the issue, tell half-truths. That's a way to deflect. And then demonize. Attack the questioner, question their motives and their integrity, drag them down into the mud with you. Get angry and self-righteous. That ought to do it. But it's so much easier just to tell the truth. Abraham Lincoln said, "No one has a good enough memory to be a successful liar." And when you tell the truth, your conscience is clear. It may hurt to tell the truth. It may be inconvenient. You may have to pay a cost, but at least your conscience is clear. Now, I'll be the first to admit that it's hard to always tell the truth. We always find some way to walk a wide circle around the truth, or to tell a half-truth, or to change the subject somehow. We all make all kinds of compromises. Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life." In everything he did, he was true to himself, he was true to God, and he was true to other people. He had perfect integrity, never a false note. And everything was in perfect alignment, body and soul, and word and action. So Jesus is our model. When it comes to telling the truth, I think the most important truth we tell is to ourselves. When we lie to ourselves, we create a contradiction within ourselves. And if we lie to ourselves too much, then we end up living a lie. The great writer Dostoevsky said, "Above all, don't lie to yourself. The person who lies to themselves and listens to their own lie comes to a point where they can't distinguish the truth within them or around them." But when we have the courage to speak the truth to ourselves, to our true selves, then we don't have to tell lies or to live a lie. When we follow the example of Jesus, then we know what it means to be a true self. As Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." You've probably heard the story of Giselle Pellicot. She's the French woman who was drugged and repeatedly raped by her husband and other men that her husband brought to their house. She endured this abuse for many years without even knowing it, until the police discovered what he was doing and told her about it. And she was, of course, horrified at first and deeply wounded. Then when her lawyers were planning her participation in the trial of her husband and these 50 men, they told her that if she wanted, she could keep her witness secret and she would be anonymous. And at first she thought that's what she would do. But her daughter suggested that maybe she ought to be a public witness. And one day when she was walking on the beach, she realized that if she was to stay anonymous, then all the men in the trial would also stay anonymous. And she decided that she would go public with her testimony. She decided to do it for the sake of other victims, so they would have the courage to come forward and tell the truth too. Well, the trial shocked all of France and the whole world. And it brought the issue of male domination and male privilege to a huge audience. Completely changed the worldwide conversation about rape. And the men went to prison. Well, what incredible courage she must have had to tell the truth, to stand up in that courtroom and to say, shame must change sides, to move from being a victim to being a survivor. So she spoke the truth not just for herself, but for all women. When Jesus was in front of Pilate, he said, "For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." May we always have the courage to tell the truth.